Drawing backgrounds with coloured pencil is always thought of as being a bit tricky and taking a long time, and many artists combine pastels to help them speed it up a little bit and make it easier. But what do you do if you don't like pastels or are allergic to the dust? Well, here's another relatively simple way of creating a background using your coloured pencils. The video has the first part of the full tutorial where I discuss the pencils and the colours I'll use, and then it moves into time-lapse. This beautiful bobcat was photographed by Ruth Hoyt. I want to use just Polychromos and Pablos to begin with, purely because they're harder, they're drier, and they're going to blend better on the Pastelmat for a background. We can then start to bring in other colours and other makes over the top of those initial layers. But the first layers, for me, the ones that work the best are the drier, harder pencils. So I've got the Polychromos and I've got the Pablos here. I have light green. I have deep cobalt green, which is possibly a little bit too greeny, too bluey. I have permanent green olive. I have emerald green Pablo. I have yellow green Pablo. And I have permanent green Polychromos. Now, it's not to say we're not going to bring any other colours in there as well. But I think these ones to begin with are going to work quite nicely, and I'll also use dark sepia and black. So when it comes to backgrounds with coloured pencils, it does take quite a long time. There's no getting away from that. I like to use the hard dry pencils because those initial layers are so easy to blend together basically on the Pastelmat. So the Pastelmat and the hard dry pencils, that's the combination that I find works incredibly well with coloured pencils. Obviously you can use your coloured pencils on different surfaces as well, but my preference is Pastelmat because it is so easy. And you can see I'm layering up the different colours, creating those little shapes. As I'm going through, you'll notice that everything becomes a little bit more vibrant. That's down to me slightly increasing my pressure, and also as you layer the pencils up, the vibrancy becomes stronger automatically anyway. But with this, it's more about the pressure. So the first few layers, very, very light pressure as it goes down on the Pastelmat, and then I increase my pressure as I bring this little bit of vibrancy up. You can see at the moment that it's not really like the photograph that I'm drawing from. It's much more vibrant, it's much more light. That's because I'm building the layers up, I'm putting those colours in first, and then I'm bringing the darker colours in over the top. I find this means that I get much more vibrancy in my greens, and I also find it a lot easier if I've got a sort of relatively I guess, I don't think you'd call it a flat background to begin with, because it's not flat. It has got some different variations of colour in there, but I find it much easier to work with that sort of more of a base and then start to bring those colours in over the top. And you can see it's working really, really, really nicely. This, I think, took all in all probably about 2.5 hours to do. So it does take quite a long time, and it's just one of those things. It's just coloured pencils are slow, they're a meditative medium, and that's why I love them so much. Trying to keep the pressure to a sort of I guess my pressure is between light and medium. I don't like to use really hard pressure because it hurts my joints, and it's not something that I particularly like to do, hard pressure. You can see I'm using a combination of the pencils, and then I'm starting to bring in this little paper stump here. You can get all sorts of different paper stumps. I think this one is probably from Amazon. I like the softer ones, the softer paper stumps, rather than the harder ones. I'll also use cotton buds, which are very, very useful as well, but a paper stump with a larger background is probably a really good idea. Blending them all of the layers together, you get a really nice smooth lay down. Be careful you don't use too hard pressure. If you use too hard pressure on Pastelmat when you're using a paper stump, the grain is going to start coming back through again. You don't want that. You just want to be moving the pigment on the surface of the Pastelmat. And then here, I think I'm using black here, just starting to bring in those really, really dark elements so that we've got this lovely mottled background, and it just works really, really, really nicely. There isn't any grain showing. You know, you can just sort of bring in all of that lovely colour, and it works so nicely, and it means that you can use your coloured pencils throughout the piece without having to use any mineral spirits, pastels, pan pastels, anything like that. You can just use your pure pencils, which I absolutely love because that's all I use. I just use my coloured pencils. So that's how you would create a background with coloured pencils on Pastelmat. Go nice and gently, nice light pressure to begin with, ramp it up a little bit as you go through the layers, and don't forget to put some lovely colours in there and enjoy yourself.